St. Louis sports fans, go deeper with STL Sports Central Insiders. Get exclusive access to Bernie, Randy, Claves, Jamal Mayers, and more, plus your chance to watch a Blues game in the Alumni Box with Jamal himself. Monthly giveaways, Bernie's columns all week, and support for local sports media. Join now at stlsportscentral.com. A team that was linked to the Cardinals a whole lot in 2025 around the trade deadline is today's topic for where Nolan Arenado should be traded on this edition of Card Central 365. All of them brought to you by DraftKings, where the crown is yours. Joe Roderick, Brenden Schaeffer with you here on STL Sports Central. And really, I mean, Brenden, when you look back in July of this past season, it seemed like the Cardinals and the Phillies were going to come together on some sort of deal with relief pitching, and nothing ever happened with that. But now we kind of revisit it, and we see if there's a match there to send Nolan Arenado to the Philadelphia Phillies to be their third baseman in 2026. Right from the top, how much sense does this kind of move make?
Well, let's talk about their current situation. We thought last offseason that Alec Bohm would potentially be traded and that they would move on from him in some capacity, and that really never came to fruition. Arenado was on the list, the Phillies were on his list this time last offseason as one of the handful of teams that he would be willing to reportedly take a trade to, and nothing ever happened there. You mentioned the July talks. I really thought Ryan Helsley would end up as a Philly for the stretch run, and that didn't materialize. He goes with the Mets. And now we're another year removed. I know that it was kind of odd, honestly, thinking back to last offseason and the way that the Phillies, just from like our outward perspective, we don't cover the Phillies. We're more familiar with what goes on with the Cardinals, but how the Phillies seemed pretty willing, at least in the way that it was being talked about, to trade Alec Bohm and just figure out third base a different way, whether that was in a deal where they got a third baseman back for him or they signed one via free agency or made a different trade. Those were all things that were being talked about after Bohm had an all-star season in 2024. He came back last year and ended up playing 120 games for them, over 500 plate appearances, and had fine numbers. 741 was the OPS. He had a pretty good batting average at 287, not a ton of power, and maybe not a lot to offer defensively. So like that would be, I guess, the thought is if the Phillies were looking at Alec Bohm's 2024 and saying, we want to move on from this guy for probably reasons other than what he brings at the plate, they want to upgrade defensively. Well, Arenado would fit that. Now, Bohm is going into the final year of his contract or his team control, where he'll then be a free agent after 2026. How do the Phillies then view what happened with their team last year, and what are the ways that they think they could improve? Would that defensive upgrade at third base still be a consideration? Do they find that with some other players that filled in at that position, or would they like a bona fide starter and maybe a future Hall of Famer to boot that could come in and maybe this is the offseason where they decide to make that shuffle with Bohm, coming into the final year of his team control?
Yeah, and that's in the saga of Alec Bohm in Philadelphia has just gone through so many different chapters over the last few years. The fact that he's still on the team as of right now, I think, is a shock to many out there in Philadelphia, because you could have made a case that 2 years ago they probably could have parted ways with him with some of the turmoil that was going on between Alec Bohm and the fans there in Philadelphia. So the fact that he has lasted this long is a testament to kind of his internal strength of being able to kind of put up with the Philadelphia
it's a testament to something. I don't know what it's a testament to, but it is a testament to something. Because I agree, we did expect. Again, we're just following this from the outside, hearing what is said from within Philadelphia about, and we're looking at the Baseball Reference page like last December, going, I don't know, just swap him if you want. Like that would be fine. Is he a good defender? No, not really. Does he have maybe for whatever reason, a personality that's not jibing with the rest of the Phillies or that city, their fan base? Maybe, but maybe we talk about a fresh start all the time. I was down to clown to see the Cardinals try to pick up Alec Bohm if it was going to mean, they save some money. the Phillies, maybe if they had such an appetite to get rid of this dude who's producing at a league average or above level offensively, then, more power to him. And they can eat the rest of Arenado's contract. The Cardinals can, pay Alec Bohm what he's owed, and everybody goes on their merry way, trying to figure out if the Cardinals can maybe get more from Bohm than the Red Sox felt they could get or were getting. He was a 3-win player, according to Baseball Reference, in 2024. Now that was down to 1.5 wins last year. And, we're starting to see the and even the defensive numbers weren't like dreadful last year. They were worse actually 2024. I don't know if maybe just having your ass on the hot seat with the way that everybody was talking about, you made him play some better defense. But I would say if you would tell me definitively like a year of Bohm defensively at third or Gorman, as much as, Gorman probably has higher upside defensively, I am not convinced that Gorman is that stellar of a fielder. Whether you have him at second or third, I think average is about the best you can hope for. He can tap into more with that throwing arm. He does have a great arm, but I don't really believe in his range unless he shows, continual gradual improvement, which, players and people can improve relative to what they used to be. That's probably the name of the game at this high level of the sport. But the way I think about Gorman is like, yeah, if anything, you're hoping to get more from his bat, right? So I talk a lot about Bohm because I'm trying to think into the Phillies' point of view on, how willing or eager they would be to try to make a deal. I'm looking at the MLB trade rumors projections for Bohm in arbitration because they did tender him an offer, not like some of the guys that were non-tendered by the Cardinals this past week. Bohm is still going through the process of being a Philly. MLB trade rumors projecting $10 million. So if the projection or expectation is $10 million and the Phillies want to move into something different, I would still say it wouldn't be the craziest thing for the Cardinals to, as a way to offset some salary, take Alec Bohm back, and then maybe the Cardinals don't have to pay down as much of Arenado's contract. They could take Bohm and maybe try to flip him or play him next year if they end up trading a number of their, position players that we've talked ad nauseum about them potentially trading. Bohm is a right-handed bat, and you can kind of have a lot of lefties. So I would still, Joe, not hate the Cardinals maybe getting a little bit creative and saying, hey, that would be a way to maybe it even feels better for Bill DeWitt, right? You tell him, hey, you don't have to pay money to somebody not to play as much as you would have. You probably still have to pay it down a little bit, but we're going to take this player who had some decent numbers and plug him in at the position and see what happens. And if it goes well, maybe you re-sign him. If it doesn't, maybe you trade him in July to a team that is looking for a right-handed bat at the deadline. I don't know how viable any of that is, Joe, but just thinking through like the process of all of that, I don't feel all that different than I did a year ago about the idea of just kind of swapping them and the Cardinals making out as the favorable entity when it comes to the cash savings that you would have.
I have a mock trade for you that I will get to in a second, but I will remind a lot of our fans out there, the last time the Cardinals and Phillies swapped third baseman, it did turn out pretty darn well for the St. Louis Cardinals over 2 decades ago. Hey, folks in Missouri, we are just a few days away from the DraftKings Sportsbook being live on December 1st. And soon you will get to reap all the benefits of those fast payouts when you win. Safe and secure app that is easy to use, along with those promos that keep the action going all season long. You can download and get your account set up right now. And then on December 1st, make that $5 bet, and you will score $300 in bonus bets when you download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code STL Sports. That's for new Missouri customers. So set up that account. Sign up today. That is STL Sports. The crown is yours in partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 and over. Physically present in Missouri. Eligibility and restrictions apply. Subject to regulatory licensing requirements. Bonus bets are non-withdrawable and expire 7 days after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos.
And there you go. Look at that. He's in the pie again. Nolan Arenado in the Phillies uniform. He is
back in the pie.
He's back in the pie on this Thanksgiving week of episodes for you. So Brenden, here you go. I have I do have a mock trade that I think would work here for all parties.
I'm holding on
when
tight.
You look at, again, the salary owed to Nolan Arenado, and we're in a perfect world. We're trying to have that wiped out by the Cardinals and get something back in return, right?
Ideally,
the Phillies,
yes.
The Phillies have the Phillies might lose Kyle Schwarber.
Okay.
They are looking to part ways with Nick Castellanos.
Okay.
Nolan Arenado for Nick Castellanos to the Cardinals, Nolan Arenado and a lefty bat out there to Philly. You don't have to spend any of the money. You're saving some with Castellanos, who's owed $20 million next year. You get a right-handed bat in the outfield to maybe take the place of Jordan Walker and what he's doing. If you maybe start him in AAA next season, which I know Bernie has been kind of pushing that possibility of doing that and hitting the reset button on him, once and for all. What do you think?
Oh, I mean, so I'm trying to get to like the baseline of what's possible here. And one thing that, as I operate through all of these discussions, that I don't believe is a possible outcome is Nolan Arenado being on the Cardinals next year. That's not an outcome that I consider even remotely possible. So with that as my baseline, if I get to the point where I have to accept another bloated veteran on a contract that he's not going to be worth, then I guess I eventually get to that point. But that wouldn't be my ideal starting point. I'd rather have somebody that I feel like is somewhat useful. I don't know that Castellanos is particularly useful, but I guess in the same way that a team would be thinking, hey, will we get a bounce back from Nolan Arenado? Maybe you get a bounce back at the plate from Nick Castellanos. And he does, like looking at his profile, hit more doubles the last couple of years than Arenado did. But I would worry that Castellanos, who's seen his power kind of sapped a little bit in 2025 compared to the previous few years, would probably go through that even more at Busch Stadium, relative to playing at Citizens Bank Park, which I don't know where the Phillies home stadium ranks in terms of, how hitter friendly versus pitcher friendly it is for a bat like Castellanos. But you're not getting great defense out of him either, right? Like, at least Arenado is going to probably have I think Arenado will have a positive wins above replacement in 2026 if he plays. I don't know that I could definitely say that for Castellanos, who had a negative one this past year. Arenado didn't hit a lick this season, and he was still a positive for WAR because of defense. So I guess if you're just that desperate to save some money, and then to your point, like, do you get I don't think you'd have to send a bat with Arenado necessarily to get Castellanos, because I don't think Castellanos is a screaming value. You might have to pay some of it down a little bit.
And that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's the reason for the left-handed bat. Let's say it's a Lars Nootbaar. Yeah, a Lars Nootbaar that you send over there. You replace Castellanos in the outfield, and you get another left-handed bat in the lineup for the Phillies, who were losing their best, or their one of their top left-handed bats.
Yeah, and Schwarber mostly, what was he doing defensively last year? Because he also had
play a little bit. I think he would play left a little bit when he wasn't, if they needed somebody else to DH a day. But I think I would guess that for the most part, he was probably an everyday DH.
Yeah, I wasn't locked in on that. Trying to dig through it now. Yeah, Harper didn't really need to DH much at all. It's been a couple of years since he's had to have any days off of first base. He's just transitioned full time. Okay, so you're talking about Schwarber. Yeah, he played Harper played 130 games at first. So Schwarber, I assume, was their primary.
Schwarber only played 8 games in left field last year.
So he's a DH. So a left-handed hitting DH who's super powerful, and obviously if they don't keep him, it's just because of money. He's going to sign a big contract somewhere else.
He's going to Pirates.
Right up there in the MVP rate. If the Pirates end up being that team that's picking up a guy like Schwarber and they're trading for Brendan Donovan, I'm going to need a minute to think through what has happened to the Cardinals, that this is what we're seeing unfold in the NL Central. But we'll get to that if we have to. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it, as they say. I'm still thinking through this Phillies thing. $20 million for Castellanos. What did you say? Arenado is at 50 left. What's the number for him? Something like
all I have for Arenado right now is what he's owed in 26, and that is $27 million in 26.
Okay, it is 15 the next year, so it is 42. That's the number that was in my head. I wanted to make sure that was right. Okay, so let me just throw these two names out at you, and then you tell me what needs to happen the rest of the way. Like, who needs to benefit to make it an even trade? Or really, let's start there. Castellanos and Alec Bohm come to the Cardinals for Arenado and Nolan Gorman. So left-handed DH, because Gorman could play the field but doesn't really have to if you're trying to fill the Schwarber void. And I'm not suggesting that they would be elated to have Gorman be their DH after they had Schwarber. But I am kind of thinking, all right, if the money of the 20 million versus the 42 isn't quite going to work out for the Phillies, and they would want a lefty bat anyway, like you were suggesting, you thought Nootbaar, give them maybe a lesser, like I think Gorman, I don't know if there's more value between Gorman and Nootbaar, but I think if you're getting Bohm, you certainly wouldn't positionally be too worried about Gorman going. And so they get their lefty, who's kind of a DH, and they get their third baseman to replace. So it's almost like for like, if you're thinking about it from the Schwarber perspective. Castellanos obviously was playing in the outfield for them, but they'll find a different outfielder. Maybe Nootbaar even fits better for that reason. I guess my question, though, before we go any further with it, who has the better end of that swap if it's just two players on both sides and nobody eating any money? And would you need to maneuver it beyond that?
When you read it all out, when you do lay it all out like that, it does seem like the Cardinals maybe do come out ahead. And I think, as you've pointed out a few times, like, we cover the Cardinals. We don't cover it. So for those watching in Philadelphia that are screaming at your phone right now as you watch this, telling us that we're idiots,
we're workshopping, we're brainstorming it.
I think when you see that, like, we what Nolan Gorman was last year, and we see the highlights of Kyle Schwarber. Like, we see the highlights of that. We don't see every at bat of Kyle Schwarber like we do for a Nolan Gorman. We know how good defensively Nolan Arenado was for the Cardinals. We read the stats on how average Alec Bohm was defensively for the Phillies.
We hear about their displeasure with this player, and we're trying to figure out why.
Yes, we read the reports on wanting to move on from Nick Castellanos. So we sit here, and that's what we're going off of with all of this. So if the main centerpiece of this is the defense, the Gold Glove defense that we saw on display a lot of times in 2025 that maybe we didn't see as much of in 2024 from Nolan Arenado, like, that's the improvement that the Phillies are getting for next year. And we know the Phillies have a really good pitching staff that I'm sure would love to force hitters to just pound ground balls into third base all game long.
Right. I'm still trying to figure out, you said maybe the Cardinals get the better end of it. I'm not sure, because I think you have to account for the value of, even though we're kind of underwhelmed with what Gorman has produced, the value of a player that is team controllable through 2028, I believe it is. So he's got 3 years of arbitration eligibility coming up where he's cost controlled. He's, not the same player as Alec Bohm, but basically, in some ways a left-handed version where kind of can play third base, and Bohm is coming up on his final year and he's getting paid $10 million. So if Gorman would produce through the arbitration system, I'll look up what MLB Trade Rumors says about Gorman. Or no, he's not even ARB eligible. Yeah, he should be for this year, unless I'm missing something on ARB eligible 2026. That's what it is now. I don't know why MLB Trade Rumors. Oh, I was just missing it. 2.9. Sorry, that was having an emotional crisis. 2.9 million is what they're projecting for Gorman this year through ARB. So if it's 3 million and then 6 and then 10, that kind of feels like a very similar trajectory of what Bohm has gone through. But they're getting the younger guy that's more, more affordable in the here and now and cost controlled. I would wonder if, and like Castellanos could be not good. He wasn't good this year offensively, and he doesn't bring the benefit of Arenado's defense. The Phillies get the short end of the stick in that their salary, their payroll goes up by 12 million or about 9 million. Arenado plus Gorman is going to be about 45. I'm knowing what Gorman's salary is going to be this year and factoring in that they would owe Arenado for the future. Whatever they want to do with Gorman the next 2 years, if they think he's too expensive, you can non-tender him. But it's like 40 for this year. It would be 30 million in payroll, and for the Cardinals, it would be 30 million in payroll. But for the next year, you owe Arenado those guarantees of the 15. So, like, would that be enough for the Cardinals to even? Again, their goal is to probably save money with the Arenado thing. This would be a way to redistribute some of that money and maybe get some production. I don't know if that's their goal, because even after they trade Arenado and Brendan Donovan and even Nootbaar, let's say, like, they're still going to be able to plug in Thomas Saggese at second base. They're still going to be able to plug in JJ Weatherhold at third. Like, I don't think the Cardinals, they may have to have Bill DeWitt just agree, yep, we've got to pay down a hefty portion of the 42 million for Arenado to get it done. But if they go the other way, the Phillies are an interesting pairing because of these players that have salaries that could potentially offset it. I don't hate what you're saying with Castellanos. I'm not sure if it quite fits what the Cardinals are hoping to do. It may be better to pay him not to play here than to bring in another bloated veteran that doesn't get you any closer to really like embracing the rebuild.
Well, we have a whole week left of these as we will continue to work our way around Major League Baseball and find the best fit for Nolan Arenado and who should trade for him. If there's a team that you want us to discuss, leave it in the comments. We will see that, and we will be sure to add it to our list and try to debate it at some point later on this week. But that'll do it for today's edition, where the Phillies were on the clock for us here with the potential trade of Nolan Arenado. Until tomorrow, he is Brenden Schaeffer. I'm Joe Roderick. This has been Card Central 365, brought to you by DraftKings, where the crown is yours.